My name is Andreas Baumbach, and it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the Target AC Steering Committee and the investigators to present the Target All-Comers Trial 4-year results. These are my conflicts. The Firehawk stent, a thin strut cobalt chromium stent which contains sirolimus with biodegradable polymer applied to recessed abdominal grooves, is designed to minimize polymer burden and reduce drug concentrations in the vessel wall. The Target All-Comers study recently reported non-inferiority of target lesion failure at 1, 2, and 3 years with the Firehawk stent, compared to the Xience durable polymer everolimus eluting stent. In the present study, we report the 4-year clinical outcomes of the Target All-Comers study. This is a schematic of the stent platform, and you can see the abdominal grooves and the drug sirolimus with a release profile of 90% of the drug released in 90 days. This is an overview of the Target All-Comers study, which was an open-label, non-inferiority trial. All patients with symptomatic coronary artery disease eligible for DES implantation were enrolled. You will see from the patient characteristics later on that this was a true all-comers study. The primary endpoint was target lesion failure, ARC-defined, which is a composite of cardiovascular death, target vessel MI, or ischemia-driven target lesion revascularization. We are now out to 4 years. We will follow all patients for 5 years. This is the flow of the patient follow-up on the right-hand side. We're now down to 4 years and have still a follow-up of 94% in both groups, with 705 and 715 reported follow-ups. It is important to just have another look at the patient and lesion characteristics, despite the fact that they have been reported before. I would like to point out the fact that there were 30% of non-STEMI or STEMI ACS patients. There was a large proportion of long lesions and multiple vessel treatments. The B2C criteria were present in about 80% of the population. And we had side branch stents in 20% and calcium treatment in 6%. This is basically the essential result. Target lesion failure, the Kaplan-Meier curve now out to 4 years, and you can see there is no difference between the two treatment curves, between the Firehawk and the Xience durable polymer stent. In numbers, you can see a low absolute number of target lesion failure of 14.6% and 13.7%. These are obviously not different. A low number of target vessel failure, and then the patient-oriented cardiac events in 25% in one group and 24% in the other group. Death at 8.7 and 7.9%, not different, no difference in cardiac death, no difference in any myocardial infarction and target vessel myocardial infarction. Further numbers here, revascularization rates very low, 17.8 and 17.5%. That is 4 years after the initial treatment. Any target vessel revascularization, 10%. Ischemia-driven target vessel revascularization, the number that is important for the stent treatment, 6.7% versus 7%. Not different and very low numbers. Definite or probable stent thrombosis 2.3 versus 2.9%, not different. And we're now very late new stent thrombosis, only 1.2% in the Firehawk group and 1.8% in the Xience group. This is a graphic illustration of some of these endpoints. The target lesion failure we have is depicted here. Cardiac death, target vessel MI, and then ischemia-driven target lesion revascularization. And you can appreciate there is no difference between those curves. So in conclusion, the 4-year follow-up of the target all-comers study shows similar safety and efficacy profiles for the Firehawk and the Xience stent. The incidence of target lesion failure and patient-oriented cardiac events beyond 1 year was low and comparable for both treatment arms, with a low rate of stent thrombosis in a broad all-comers population. I thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, so thank you for that, Andreas. I think that was great and really wonderful to see that the results are robust out to 4 years. I wonder if you could comment. I mean, you were one of the highest enrollers in this study in terms of the types of lesions, the complexity, and the overall results in those types of lesions.
Yes, thank you for that question. We've shown many cases of what has actually gone into this study at the time, with other investigators also becoming very confident. It is really fair to say that after an initial, getting used to the new stent, we were very comfortable with it and did not hesitate to use it in all comers. In bifurcations, we did culottes, we did left mains. Within the size range, we did pretty much everything. It is a workhorse stent in our hands.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, maybe I'm going to ask William, you were part of this clinical program. One of the things that struck me, two things actually. One is the MACE rate. So the patient-oriented outcomes were about 25% at 4 years, which to me seemed a little bit high. And also, the very late stent thrombosis, same in both groups, but still, it seemed a little bit high to me. Do you want to comment on that? What do you think is going on? Is it medical therapy? Is it just the patient population, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra. Of course, we looked at this while preparing our session, and I did a little bit of homework comparing with randomized trials using other devices of the same type, particularly in terms of strut thickness around 80. And it's true that if you take the same primary endpoint, like target lesion failure, the numbers here seem to be slightly higher. If you compare to, only 1 or 2% higher compared to other studies like Century, 5 years, Dissolve, 3 years, etc. But of course, we have the power of randomization here that shows that it's no different compared to science, and we're lucky we have that randomization. So the question really is, as Andreas alluded to, is it related to the all-comer design and the fact that we've enrolled severe patients, long lesions, etc., which I think is the case. There is a small question mark around COVID. Is there any indication that we could have had slightly higher event rates because of not necessarily direct, but perhaps also indirect COVID effects?
Yeah, and I think, based on what we saw, we didn't see a direct relationship between COVID. We did look at that, and I think that's an important point. Marty, this is a biodegradable stent, polymeric stent, right? And I think the promise has been that, there'd be less inflammation and potentially better results long term. Of course, the study is powered for non-inferiority, but, can you comment on that? Are we kind of barking up the wrong tree? Is it the design of the studies? Just if you, put that in context for us.
Certainly, this is another well-conducted study. It's a large randomized trial, all comers, literally everyone, left mains, CTOs, STEMIs, non-STEMIs, bifurcations. As Andreas said, he treated pretty much everything. There were essentially no exclusions, which is really exciting to see an all-comer study like this. But when I look at the new technology, many years ago, we talked about the promise of a biodegradable polymer, DES, that it would potentially yield better results, perhaps from the standpoint of safety or late events, that perhaps we'd be able to reduce the duration of dual antiplatelet therapy. These were some of the promises. What I tend to see, and this study certainly confirms that, is that yes, it appears to be as good as a durable polymer drug-eluting stent, which is among the best in class. But I don't really see the differentiation suggesting that there's any element of superiority. Now, they're going to be doing the Target First study, which is going to be a 1 month versus 12-month DAP study. They just began to enroll in that study. So maybe they'll have some interesting data with short-term DAP. Maybe in studies like this, we can look at some of the more complex lesion subsets and see if there's a differentiation in the more complex lesion subsets. So that would be interesting to do a landmark analysis at a year onward in lesion subsets to see if there's any evidence or anything that would generate a hypothesis suggesting superiority. But at least to this point, even though I think this is a great stent, the results are excellent, equal to the durable polymer DES. I'm struggling to find if there's anything that is uniquely different that would cause me to want to use this versus what we currently have.
Can you just quickly comment about the status of the US IDE trial? I believe you're leading that.
Yeah, that's an interesting trial. Again, it's a randomized trial, and it is on the verge of beginning. So we expect it will take approximately 1 year to enroll. The design of the study is not going to provide greater clarity in terms of the unique characteristics of this device, but certainly should fulfill what would be the FDA regulatory criteria for approval in the United States. So that study, Target 4, is, again, now in the process of beginning to activate and ramp up, and we'll hopefully be able to present some results at PCR in the coming years.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, I think we can discuss this and, for much longer, but we're going to have to move on to our next session. So thank you all for a great discussion here. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jean-Bo Ge from Shanghai, who's going to be talking about the 4-year results of the VitaFlow TAVR system for patients with severe aortic stenosis.